morning, everybody. Welcome to Addicted to Gear live Sunday show. Hopefully, all the guitar aficionados that are in the house today are well rested and ready for another show. This is episode 250 of the Addicted to Gear show, in case you didn't already know. And 250 Sunday shows together. That's quite a milestone. We have to celebrate. I hope you guys are doing well, and whether you've been here from the start or just subscribed last week or just stumbled on the show, thank you for hanging out, supporting the channel, and making the show what it is. This is a very special part of my day, and I always enjoy being here. So hopefully you guys are ready for an interesting show. We have a lot of interesting topics already lined up. And I wanted to say also happy Easter. Yeah, it's hopefully you're surrounded by family, chocolate, guitars, maybe even a few pedals and nice pastel colors to celebrate. You know, maybe you have a little Easter hunt set up where you can search for some cool pedals in nice pastel colors. Maybe some of you will even be able to get some practice time between eating desserts and, digesting. I'm Italian, so it's all about food for me. And we actually had our Easter celebration with the family yesterday because everybody's so busy with other get-togethers that it's hard to get everybody together at the same time. So we figured we'd do it a day early, beat the rush, so to speak. And I'm still digesting, by the way. I'm still a little wrecked from last night, but it's all good. So good morning. I hope you guys can hear me okay. If the volume levels are good, the guitar level is good, give me a thumbs up and we'll get cracking on the show. I was just playing around with this guitar, which I really love. So easy to play, man. The neck on this guitar is wonderful. The neck really makes up for the size of the body, because the body's a little bit bigger, a little larger, but the neck is so easy to play on this guitar. I love it. So can you guys hear me all right? All good? I wanted to see if you guys were paying attention, because I basically, the EQ on the Fractal, I changed it up a little bit because I was looking at a way to get the guitar to cut in the mix a little bit better. Because when I play live sometimes with the band, sometimes with certain sounds you get drowned out because there's too many frequencies that are interfering with other members of the band, like the drums or the vocals or the bass. So I actually played around with the EQ settings, because the Fractal has 3 global EQ settings that you can use. And usually Fractal ships the unit factory default, everyth's flat. So sometimes you have way too much bass, way too much high end. And for those of you that play with a band, you probably know that that's not always a good thing. So I actually gave it a nice EQ curve to be able to compensate for that. And it makes it a little bit thinner sounding on its own, but it cuts through the mix really nicely. And if you guys are interested in knowing a little bit more about how I do that, I can share that with you later on if you like, for those of you that are playing with a live band. So we have, what do we have here today? I'm surprised that there's so many people here. I figured most of you would be celebrating with your family, eating, having Easter meals or whatever. But I'm glad you're here. Perfect. So good morning, everybody. Mazzetti is here. Jack, Ken, Mark, Wayne, NFM, D. Smith, Stuart, Paul, Gene. Everybody's here. Presley's here. Nice full house. Great. Fantastic, guys. All right. Good. If any of you don't know the drill, I'll just go through it real quick. I always do this because sometimes there's new people that come in or watch the replays and then, they don't know what to do for the next time. So guys, if you are new, please subscribe to the channel. If you're subscribed, you'd be able to chat and enjoy communicating with everybody that's already here online. And you got to just subscribe for a minute on the live Sunday shows to be able to chat with us, all right? Other than that, if you do decide to subscribe to the channel, you're helping us out, and it's appreciated. If you guys have any questions, I always like to mention this also. If you have any questions that are geared for me, please put a question mark in front of your question so I can easily pick it out from the comments and reactions that I see on my screen here, because there's a lot that go by really quick sometimes. Okay, good. Let's start off by just seeing what's up. What are you guys talking about today? I'm gonna be talking about quite a few different things today. An interesting show lineup that I have here. I'll give you maybe a quick rundown of what I think we should be talking about today if you guys are interested in sticking around. There's a couple of interesting things that happened this week. Let's see. I think one of the main things, well, we have our poll question going on. We have interesting news that has been floating around the internet that I want to talk about. There's a few different new music release that I think is really exciting, at least for me. There's a cool new guitar that I have my eyes on and being tempted by. I have a funny story that happened to me this week. There's my busted toe. I forgot to mention my busted toe. Yeah, I think I broke my toe. What a way to spend the day, man. You can't see it here, but my little piggy, one of my little piggies, all swollen up, second from the big toe, and it's very painful. And I don't know how I did it, but I'm limping around, and I think it's probably fractured, at least. If not fractured, then badly sprained. I don't know how that happened, but yeah, it's going to be a limpy week, I think, for me. But it is what it is. So all that great stuff is coming up, along with other things. And obviously your input, if you have anything that you guys want to talk about, feel free to jump in, okay? Because it's not just me yapping here all day long. It's a two-way communication. And of course, if you guys like what I do here, please give us a thumbs up, okay? That's it. That's what I wanted to say. We're going to start the show and talk about interesting, cool stuff. So first, I like to leave the platform open for you guys to just pipe in from the beginning. Give us some information on what you guys are dealing with out there in life, what you like, what you don't like, what's going on. I like to start the conversations by allowing you guys to pipe in and sort of just direct the show before I kind of take over and start talking about other things. So D-Mac says, did the Canucks out there see Long and McQuaid got robbed at Edmonton? $118,000 in gear stolen. Apparently the third robbery there within a week. I did hear about that. And that's something I actually wanted to talk about a little bit today. So if you're in Edmonton, you might be getting some deep discounts on the used market soon. I'm joking, guys. I don't condone any kind of robbery, any type of criminal activity out there. But yeah, I heard about that. And it's not the first time, actually. It actually happened a couple of times. I don't know why Edmonton is being targeted like that. And it's funny because the article that I read didn't go into that much detail. They did mention it was $118,000 of merchandise. And apparently it was like a smash and grab. They basically, I think they had some video footage of this. Basically, they smashed the doors, the front doors or something like that. And I believe it's the Long and McQuaid on 92nd Avenue. 92nd Street and 28th Avenue. I'm not that familiar with Edmonton, but apparently it happened on a Tuesday morning, and there were four masked people. They could be employees for all we know, right? But they grabbed dozens of items and they put them in the back of a truck And it just took them about 5 minutes to get away with about $118,000 worth of stuff. Pretty crazy, man. I'm sure Long McQuaid has insurance for all this kind of stuff. But most of the items are that they targeted were very expensive. They were either, between $2,500 and $8,000. So they probably knew what they were doing. They probably went for the good stuff. But I don't know what the next step are. I guess they have serial numbers of all this stuff registered. So if somebody buys stuff, it's kind of hard to know if you're buying something stolen. That's my biggest fear. Sometimes you might come across a pretty good deal and the item might be brand spanking new, and you don't know if the guy's pulling a fast one on you, right? If he's trying to sell you something that's not used, but that he claims is used but is actually stolen, then you're in possession of stolen gear. And that's never good, because whether you bought it used or not, unless you can prove that you bought it from someone on the used market, you're going to go down for the fall, because the cops don't care. If you have possession of stolen merchandise, it's up to you to prove that you got it from someone else. And of course, when we buy used gear, how often do we get a receipt? You don't have a receipt or anything like that, right? Unless you draw up some paper that says, hey, I bought, a Gibson Les Paul with this serial number from Mr. Smith on, April 20th, 2024, 2025, and you have everybody sign it. That's about all you can do, and that's not necessarily a bad idea, to be honest with you, if you guys are buying used stuff most of the time, just to protect yourself. You never know, man. We don't think about it that often, but it does happen. It probably happens more often than you think. Shane says that my father had his guitar collection stolen in Edmonton. He always keeps serial numbers. For insurance purposes, I highly recommend that. I do that with my guitars. I take pictures. I have serial numbers. I have distinguishing marks, all that kind of stuff. I have it in a little file that I keep tucked away, just in case. You never know. If worst comes to worst, you have insurance, but at the end of the day, the insurance is gonna really be a pain to be able. They how insurance companies are, right? If you don't have everything spelled out for them, everything documented, it's kind of hard. Anyway, Rob F says hey Rob, nice to see you. Rob says I was looking at a used Rev Star in Guitar Center hanging on the wall, walked away, and 5 minutes later some guy walked up and bought it. This goes down to what I call it's not meant to be. And I had an episode of It's Not Meant to Be this week too, so I'm going to tell you that story. But if it's gone, it means it wasn't for you, man. Maybe it's a good thing you don't realize it right away, but you'll probably realize it later on. Hey Orion, how's it going? Orion says, have tariffs affected the gear prices over there? It's hard to tell, because gear prices keeps going up. I never see it come down. So I really don't know what causes prices to continue to go up for guitar and gear, but it seems every time I walk into a music store, it's always more expensive. So I don't see anything blatantly obvious that I can point out to the tariffs right now. And to be honest, I haven't really purchased something new from a guitar store, like an amplifier. I did recently visit a store, one of my local stores, because I was eyeballing the SG, the 61 SG in what they call Fire Mist. I believe that's what it was called. And I have a funny story about that too. You have to remind me not to forget to tell you. I might even have some pictures I can show you. Pretty crazy. But long story short, those prices were pretty expensive, but I don't see them out of whack just yet. That doesn't mean they won't continue to go up. I think they will. But I mean, it also depends where you're buying your stuff from, right? If you're buying US made goods, they probably will be more expensive, unfortunately. If you're buying stuff from other places in the world, maybe Europe, Germany, France, England, wherever, the prices should stay the same. But I think overall we're gonna be seeing prices going up for Chinese-made goods. Unfortunately, I think that's gonna definitely be something that we're gonna be seeing across the board. But there's also the clause, and I don't want to get this into, a political discussion by any means, but there's also a clause that says that anything under a certain amount is not affected by tariffs. In other words, I think the cutoff point is $800. So anything $800 or lower usually does not get affected by tariffs. But it does not mean, let's say if you're ordering something or you're buying something on your own, that doesn't mean that overall the price of the object that you're buying is not going to go up anyway, because the parts are being made all over the world. So we'll see what happens with all of that. It's going to be very interesting, but I'm probably going to be shopping used, except if I really get tempted. There is something that I've been looking at, and I'll explain that to you guys in a little bit. We'll talk about all of that. Good question so far. Hey guys, don't forget to answer the poll question, because we did have a poll question this week. And I think everybody should have an opportunity to know about it and answer it, so it makes it more fun for everybody. Music and Gear says, I just picked up a Yamaha Revstar. This is an underrated guitar. Sounds and plays great. And I've mentioned this many times, and I think Music and Gear, you might be aware, you've been here for a while, but Yamaha makes great stuff. They really do. High quality stuff. I rarely hear bad things about Yamaha. And the Revstar has definitely been making people take notice. Since Matteo Mancuso started to play a Revstar, I think they got really lucky in the sense that he was playing a Revstar, and he just happens to be probably the hottest new upcoming guitarist in the world. Free advertising for them. So I'm sure there's going to be many more Yamaha Revstars being sold. And, as you said, they sound and they play great. There's no reason to shun that particular model from Yamaha. The only thing about Yamaha that I felt is it's unfortunate. It's not a cool brand. This is the thing. Yamaha has been around a long time. They have really nice models. One of my cousins had a beautiful double cut. I think it's the 2000. I think it's the Yamaha 2000 is the model. It basically looks like a mix between a Gibson Les Paul and an SG. It's got the body shape, size of a Gibson Les Paul, but it has two double cut instead of a single cut. Santana used to play that model early on in the early days. Really nice guitar. But the brand recognition for Yamaha, like there hasn't been, besides Santana in the early days, there hasn't been any real big known artists that are cool playing the brand. And I think that's the reason why, the brand hasn't really taken off all that much overall. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily a cool brand like Gibson is, or Gretsch, or Fender, or some other brands. They're just, but they make great stuff. Sometimes too good. Everything that they make is really consistent. So yeah, if you're looking for a good guitar, they definitely make good guitar. Music and Gear says, Tony has gas. Something I looking at equals gas. Oh, you're explaining what gas is. Okay, good. Shane says, I see a lot of cheap used guitars in 2025. That's why I've spent too much money on them this year. But Shane's in Japan, guys, so in case you don't know, things might be a little different over in Japan. I'm not sure how you are being affected, or you may be affected with tariffs. Maybe you're not being affected with tariffs at all, which is a great thing. If things get crazy over here, Shane, you might end up being my go-to contact for cool Tokai guitars. If you find a great Japanese Tokai guitar, we can arrange some kind of a deal to get it shipped over here. I joke, but I'm not really joking. You never know where things are going to go, guys. Got to be ready for anything. It's always good to have a plan B. Paul's here. Hey, Paul, what's going on? Paul says the $800 thing was killed stateside by the Trump tariffs, not the Canadian side. Okay, I didn't know that. Well, that sucks. So basically, Americans are going to be paying tariffs no matter what, even if it's under 800 bucks. Well, isn't that wonderful? Great news. Orion Quest says, it looks like a stunted SG. Kind of, if you're referring to the Yamaha that I was talking about earlier, it's kind of like an SG. Yeah, exactly. Marcel's here. Hey, Marcel. How's it going, buddy? Hope you're doing well. Marcel says, I bought an Ibanez EX series made in Korea for about 200 bucks this week. It's sort of off-white. HSH has a Floyd Rose and a locking nut and 5-way switch. Cool. Now, are you going to be using that as your main guitar? Backup guitar? Is that your first guitar with a Floyd Rose on it? Sometimes you can get really lucky with Ibanez guitars. For some reason, they don't necessarily hold their value all that much in terms of used merchandise. It depends on which ones. If you buy the RX series, there's different ones. So the RX are a little bit more sought after. Some of the other ones tend to go down in price. Steven says, I have 2 Yamahas, and I'm kind of cool. Hey, Steven, no offense. I never said the players are not cool. I just said, Yamaha's, the brand recognition around Yamaha is not necessarily. Like, you don't see Slash playing Yamaha. You might, eventually, you never know. And Rich says, Billy Sheehan. I always mispronounce. Yeah, but that's a bass player. I'm not talking about basses here, guys, because I think Yamaha basses, a lot of bass players like Yamaha. I think even, Billy for sure. I've seen him playing Yamaha. I think even Michael Anthony played Yamaha at a certain point. Quite a few people played Yamaha in terms of bass. I think they make solid basses. Shane says, I sold a Tokai Super Strat with a crackle finish a month ago. I remember seeing that. Yeah. But for me, Tokais, I'm into Les Pauls, SG style Tokais, Les Paul style Tokais, or maybe 335 style Tokais. Not so much the Strats for whatever reason. I'm not saying they're not good, but that's not something I would immediately jump to right now. Boomerang. Hey, Boomerang. He says, been looking at DTF transfers for guitar bodies, like what's used on skateboards, t-shirts, etc. Direct to fabric, is that what you're talking about? Is that what, I think that's what DTF stands for? Yeah, I don't know if that exists. I know there's you can buy vinyl decals, but I don't know about the direct to fabric. Is that something you're looking at, maybe to build your own kind of mock fabric style guitar bodies? Is that what you're looking for? Presley, what's going on, dude? Presley says, when I'm doing oil and wax finishes, I have a special method of thinning out the first application of oil with mineral spirits. It helps to allow the oil to penetrate deeper in the grain to pop figure. Yeah, I think a lot of people actually do something similar to that. There's a special name for it. I forget what it's called. There's a term for it. But yeah, you usually make the actual oil or wax thinner so it goes deeper and makes that grain beautiful. Yeah. It's a great technique. And DMAX says, in my opinion, entry-level Yamaha guitars are probably some of the best quality and value guitars for the money. Punch well above their price point. Yeah, I agree with you. Absolutely. This week I stumbled across a photo of an Ibanez guitar. I think I saved it in my photos. I'll see if I can dig it up. Which was basically the similar to the first Ibanez guitar that I ever owned. And I've been trying to, I should not have sold that guitar because it did have sentimental value to me. My late mom bought me that guitar when I started playing. And, you know, when you're young, you don't think about these things. But now that she's gone, I would have loved to have that guitar. And I should have sold it. But I did, unfortunately. I always keep my eye open for it because it's a very unique model. And it's pretty easy to find because there's not that many of them out there. And I stumbled on a photo of one of them, and I had the intention to show you guys a picture. I don't know if I saved it to my photos, but I'm gonna take a quick look here, see if I can actually, if I do have it, I'll show you. But I also I updated my operating system and it does all kinds of funny things. But let me see if I can find it. Keep talking amongst yourselves. Okay. It's got to do a whole import thing now. Sorry, I don't think I'll be able to show you that right now, but if I can, I will. I'll show it to you. I keep saving a whole bunch of stuff all the time, so. Oh, I do. I have it here. Yeah, I did. I happen to have found it. So let me show you this, guys. I don't know if I can, if my operating system here works and allows me to do it. Let's see. Let's see if we can get lucky. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Can you guys see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can, because sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Do you see that picture of that Ibanez? That's an Ibanez Roadstar, if you can see it. It's a Roadstar 2, to be more specific. They came out with that, I believe, in the early 80s. And can you guys see that? Or am I talking to myself here? I don't want to pull the same scenario as what happened last time when I kept on talking. I thought you guys could see the photo I was sharing and you couldn't. Can you see it? Okay, you can see it. Good. So this is a model that came out in the early 80s, and it's a little bit unique because it had kind of the beginning of what turned out to be like a locking floating bridge, but it didn't have the locking nut on it. And it was one of the only models that they had that was completely stealth. It was all black. Pickups, hardware, knobs. This one's missing a knob. This is not my guitar, by the way. It's just a guitar that I found that looks like it. Rosewood fretboard, you know, really a nice guitar. It was kind of a Strat style guitar, but kind of like their version of what the beginnings of a Super Strat kind of thing. And after that, they went pretty ballistic with all of the mods and all of the crazy lightning bolt inlays on the fretboard and stuff. But till this point, they were still kind of tame. And that's basically, you know, my very first guitar, and it played really well. I never had issues with it. Again, it's a shame that I sold it, but unfortunately I did. And if ever I can, you know, if ever I come across this thing again, I'm probably gonna snag it if I can find one that's in good condition. That was a brand new purchase for me too, by the way. Martin says Roadstar, like Marty McFly. Yeah, he did play a Roadstar in Back to the Future. I caught that too. Not a lot of people recognized it, but he had not that particular model, but similar, different color. And that was a first guitar purchase that I ever made. I still remember the day that I bought my first guitar. I think that's one of the things everybody remembers is like the first guitar they ever bought. I'm pretty sure most people have that like sizzled in their brain. They could probably remember, you know, the day of the week practically that it was, or the weather that was happening. that particular day. I remember like as if it was yesterday. I remember the guy who worked in the store, the guy showing me an amplifier, um, an amplifier that he was trying to sell me, which we ended up buying just because it was cheap. Wasn't a good amplifier at all, but transistor I still remember. Um, but it was, it's those things that basically those memories that stick with you forever. Hey Ryan, good morning. What's going on? He says, Happy Easter. I got a new Marshall Code 25 as a gift from Searching FT Community. It's my first Marshall amp for me. It's really got some great tones of so many amps with great effects. So is it a gift? You got yourself a gift, or somebody gifted you this amplifier? That's pretty cool. Congratulations. I think it's always great to celebrate new gear. I always celebrate new gear. Music and Gear says the Roadstar was great. I had one in '85, picked it up new. Yeah, good memories. Man, I would pay anything to go back to the '80s. The '80s were great. I think '70s and '80s, like late '70s, early '80s, perfect. I had such great times in those years. Shane says, I sold my '80s Kramer. I have seen others, but they are all beat up to shit. Keep looking, man. You'll come across a good one. There's good ones out there. Orient Quest says, ooh, Marty playing the audition. I remember. Yeah, that's the scene. Yeah, exactly. That is the scene. That was a great movie, by the way. I love that movie. After all these years, you can still watch it, and it's still, it's still great. Gene says, Flood is right too. Epiphone is getting sloppy thanks to Gibson. What am I missing here? You guys are talking about something that I missed? I'm not sure what the topic was. So Presley's still giving some tips. He says, after numerous more coats of oil, I'll do my last coat of oil with a 1500 grit wet sandpaper, let it cure for a few days, and then do a coat of wet wax. And again, use 1500 grit, and it's glossy butter. Yeah, so you stop at 1005, Presley. No need going higher than that. I've seen people going up to 1005 and then doing the rest of the buffing with buffing compounds and a buffing wheel. That usually gets you there. I don't have a buffing wheel. I'd love to get one. Makes working on paint jobs so much easier than doing it with elbow grease. I usually do that by hand or use a drill with a little pad. Not the best. The buffing wheel will definitely be better. Marcel says, yes, my first Floyd Rose. I heard of the caveats while stringing them, but also heard of how they hold tuning when dive bombed. Yeah, as long as you have them set up properly, Marcel, you shouldn't have issues. Just keep everything balanced. The key is really front and back. It's not just the front, but also making sure that the little springs in the back are adjusted properly. So Boomerang says that he was referring to direct-to-film transfers. Okay, that's what they're called, direct-to-film. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's companies making that kind of stuff. If you find any, let me know. Could make a cool project for a next paint job or something like that. Orion says, I have seen some old Tokai and Greco Les Paul style guitars with bolt-on necks. Are they considered undesirable compared to the set neck models? I would say so. Those are usually the lower end models, the ones that have the bolt-ons. They're usually the ones that are made in Korea. I don't think any of the Japanese made Tokais or Grecos have bolt-on necks. So yeah, they would be like considered the lower end of the models that they offer. Kevin says mine is Yamaha Pacifica 612 Mist Green. Mist Green, does that have little sparkles in it, Ken? Shane says, did anyone see Dr. Andre Flood's Epiphone reviews this week? He begins the video with saying, I don't want to waste your time. These guitars are crap. So that's what you guys were talking about. Okay, I get you now. I get you. Okay, so he thinks Epiphones are crap. All right. Gotcha. Shane says, I have one Epiphone and I agree it's crap. LOL. I didn't see that video. I don't know if he's talking about the new ones or the old ones in that video. Maybe I'll check it out after we can see it. All right, cool. So Boomerang says conductive paint is expensive to buy and you don't get much for the money. I'm trying 2 parts graphite powder to 1 part acrylic hobby paint. And so far so good. Much cheaper option. Okay, so you guys are talking about shielding options now. Is that what you're talking about here? I guess that's probably it. Yeah, those shielding paint is very expensive and often not even real shielding paint, especially depending on where you buy it from. A lot of things claim that it's shielding paint, but it's not. There's cheaper options though than that, I found. Ryan Hall says, yes, it was gifted me from searching for tone community. So grateful as an old man 58 and finally got a Marshall. Oh, and Yamaha acoustic in the early years. Well, congratulations. You must be lucky, man. I never win anything, unfortunately. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to tell you an interesting story that happened to me this week. Actually, there's 2 interesting stories that happened to me this week, okay? If you guys remember last week, I was talking about having like pretty bad gas for another SG, Silver Mist. I actually called, I went to the store. I mentioned this last week. I went to the store to take a look if they had any. Kind of almost convinced to buy it, even though I don't really need it, unfortunately. It was just one of those things. I went there and they didn't have any in stock. So that's sign number 1, right? Remember I told you guys, if you get a guitar, if it's meant to be, it's going to happen. And if it's not meant to be, it's just not meant to be. So listen to the universe on these things. So I called them. Well, I went there. They didn't have any. I called them after thinking about it and asking them to see if they can get one in stock so I can take a look at it, play it first. I don't like buying things without seeing them first. And they looked in their computer, they looked around, and basically there's no more. There's no more, and the only new ones that are going to be coming out are probably going to be spring of next year if you want to get one, at least here in where I am. But the gentleman was nice enough to look at inventory in other stores. And there was one in BC, and I think there was another one in Edmonton that hadn't been sold and was considered B stock. And so he says, I can probably knock off a couple $100 off of those if you're interested. So I said, well, yeah, I mean, B stock for me is not a deal breaker unless it's something major. And, B stock could mean many things. It could mean, a little nick that's almost indistinguishable. It could be, a faulty switch or something that, somebody realized, the knob fell off or something like that, and they returned it. So I said, do you know what the issue is? And he's like, I'm not really sure. I have to look into it. So he goes, I'll look into it and I'll get back to you. Okay. So then he comes back to me later on that day and he says, well, I looked into it and they tell me that there's some cracks. So I'm like, cracks? What does that mean, cracks? Like, is that a cracked off headstock? I just hit my toe. I should stop moving so much. Okay. Is that like a cracked headstock or a cracked neck? You know, a neck joint? What do you mean by cracked? He's like, I'm not sure. I got to get pictures. So I'm like, okay, get your pictures. Please send me some pictures. And that's what he did. So he sent me over some pictures. And I don't know if I can share those pictures. Maybe I can. I'm sure I have them here someplace. But I was kind of shocked when I saw the pictures because what they were cracks in the finish, in the paint, in the lacquer. And not just one crack, many cracks. And I'm like, that's not normal. You know, that should not be happening. And if that is happening, then I have a feeling there's probably an issue with those guitars. I have a 61, but it's not the silver mist finish. It's just a regular finish. And so far, I don't have any cracks in it. I have another older one, no cracks in it. Everything seems hunky-dory. But, you know, this is not normal. So I wanted to show you those pictures. I'm going to pull them up. I think I still have them in my email here someplace. Yeah, I do. I found them. Let me just, can I download? I think I can download all of these. Let me see here. I'm going to try downloading them all. And just giving you an idea of what I'm talking about here. And you guys can tell me if this is normal to you, because it does not seem normal to me. There was 2 separate guitars. So there's a whole bunch of pictures here. I just downloaded the first batch. I'll download the second batch and show you in a second here what I'm talking about. But it's alarming because if this is a brand new guitar and this is happening to a brand new guitar, like there's no reason this should be happening unless the guitar was abused in some way. Okay, so here, let me show you what I'm talking about here. I'll start off with a couple of pictures here. Let's see, how am I going to do this? Give me 1 segundo. Okay, here. Let's do it this way. Can I do it that way? Whatever. Okay, I'm going to just show you one at a time. All right, let me share this with you guys. You tell me if this is normal, okay? Now, can you see this here? Okay, this is one of the guitars. And you can see that pretty clear crack in the back of the neck. And I think it's happening at about the 9th fret here. Something around possibly the 9th fret, 12th fret, not really sure. Can't see the front of it. Can you see that, guys? So that's the type of thing that he mentioned. Now there's that one in the back. Then there's this one here. Can you see this? This is on the bottom horn, which basically looks like it started from the screw hole. That often happens on lacquered guitar for whatever reason. So it happens from the hole and then moves forward. Okay. So there's those 2. I'm gonna close this guy here. How do I close this thing? Let me just get rid of this. Let me move over to the next ones for you. There's this one. So can you see the back of just behind the nut? Yeah, an orange peel too. Yeah, exactly. So this one has it happening right by the nut. Then there's more, guys. Then there's, okay, this one I already showed you. Take a look at this guy here. Look at the nut. Look at the, can you see this? So there's another crack further up. Then on the other side, see, there's a closer view of the one happening by the nut. Now take a look at this. This is another guitar. This is another guitar, but you have the same thing happening on the back of the neck. You can see that happening here. It's a little less, hasn't gone all the way around yet, but it's gonna. This is the front of the guitar. I mean, I still like the look of the guitar, but with these defects on them, look at this. That's also by the horn. Now check out the back of the neck here. Like, that looks like there's not even enough lacquer on it. Like, you can still see the grain happening. And there's like little lines in it as well. I don't know, man. It doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. This is the side, goes all around. Check it out. I don't know, man. I'm not convinced at all. So, as I was saying, sometimes you have to listen to the universe. And to me, that's a sign. So, the fact they didn't have any in stock, the fact that, there was, two guitars that have all these issues in them and stuff like that, I think I'm not going to go for it. Obviously not. I don't know if this is because it's the first run or there was issues with some of them, but I don't. That's not something that I'd be willing to pay, $2,500 for. Gene, I thought about that. Maybe it was painted in unstable temperatures. Maybe it was stored in maybe the store had it in a stockroom that was cold over the winter, by a door somewhere. I don't know. But that doesn't usually happen until things get really cold or there's an obvious defect. So for those reasons, I'm out. My gas for that particular guitar completely went away, and I'm glad I saw it. I'm glad I had the experience to talk to the guys, and they were nice enough to send me these pictures, because without seeing these pictures, I would never have known, and I would have hate to have purchased a guitar like that only to see that happen to my guitar. I wouldn't be happy. That's not something you can easily fix, unless you want to relic your guitar. Shane says Gibson factory tours always show 335s and LP constructions, never how they make SGs. We know why. But it's funny because painting these guitars should be exactly the same as the other guitars. Why would it be different? Yeah, I agree with you, Eddie. Not B stock at all. That's like D or E stock. So that's it. I'm passing on that one. This is why, buying used gear sometimes is better, because you have the opportunity to look at an older guitar that's lived its life for quite a few years. So if anything was to happen, it probably would have happened already. I think what ends up happening sometimes is that they make these guitars too quick, and maybe the wood is not even like completely dry yet, or maybe the paint process is just too quick, or I don't know what it is. But if anybody knows, if anybody here paints guitars with lacquer, maybe you can give me some insight on what's going on. But I just wanted to warn you guys in case you're looking at some of this stuff. So yeah, anyway, so that's what it is. So that's my first story this week. By the way, guys, please give me a thumbs up. There's like 65 of you in the house so far. Only 34 of you have hit that like button. I would appreciate it if you can hit it. It would definitely help the algorithm and hopefully get more people to see the Sunday shows, and we can get more people trickling in. So that's my first crazy story of the week. My second crazy story of the week is this. I don't know if you guys remember this, but at a certain point, probably about 10 years ago, I had purchased a Supro dual tone amplifier. And the reason why I purchased that amplifier was I'm a big Jimmy Page fan. Everybody here probably knows that. And I love that early Led Zeppelin sound. And, it's probably the closest I was going to get to an actual amplifier giving me that tone. So when they initially came out with the new Supros, when they were kind of re-released, reincarnated, so to speak, I had gone to the store to look at something, and they happened to have some, and I played through one, and I immediately fell in love with it, and I bought it on the spot. That's rare. The rare times I actually buy a guitar or a gear straight from the store. It only happened a couple of times, but I couldn't resist, so I ended up buying it. And actually, I did the right thing, because on the initial release of those amps, they were not that expensive. And then, because they were re-releasing it into the market, they probably were playing it safe, and they had lowered the prices, so I got it for a very good price. Eventually, they got very popular, and now they're very expensive. Now you can get, let's say, a Black Magic Supro. They're about $2,500. Not cheap at all. So anyway, long story short, I regretted selling that amplifier. I did sell it, and I should not have, but I did. That was one of my stupid moves. And so lately I've been gassing over that amplifier again. It just so happens I stumbled across one recently for sale. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try and snag it. I'm going to snag it back. So I contacted the gentleman that was selling it. He was asking too much for the amplifier. Like, honestly, he was probably asking at least 20% too much. So I asked him if he was negotiable. He said no. I'm like, okay, no problem. Let it be. Kept my eye on it just to see if it would have sold. There's not a lot of gear, expensive gear being sold that quickly anymore right now. It's pretty quiet. Stuff is sticking around for a long time. At least the stuff that I've been looking at, if you look at any kind of boutique gear, it doesn't usually sell very quickly. Sometimes it's been there for months, and it just doesn't move because people don't want to spend that kind of money. So I kept my eye on it, and then about a week later, I thought about it. I said, look, let me up my price a little bit, see if we can come to a middle ground, see what happens. So I upped my price a little bit, contacted the guy. He's like, okay, I'd be interested in doing something with you. I'm like, good, perfect. So I had set a date. In the meantime, after he rejected me the first time, I put out a couple of posts on some local boards saying that I want to buy a Super dual tone, figuring, if he doesn't want a deal, maybe there's someone else out there that's willing to sell me one. He happened to stumble on these posts, I guess, somehow, and I think he got offended for whatever reason. I don't know why, but he's like, and I had put them before we actually said we were going to do the deal, and he's like, are you like serious? Are you looking for, are you going to buy it? Do you want to buy it? I'm like, yeah, for sure I want to buy it. I said I was going to buy it. Why wouldn't I buy it? He's like, because I stumbled on your ads. I don't want to explain the whole story, but basically I think I offended the guy. He removed his post. He removed his ad, and I guess he decided not to sell it. I don't know why. Strange fellow. But again, sometimes there's signs, right? I don't get it. I mean, like, what does that have to do with anything? If I said I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it. So anyway, long story short, no Super dual tone for the time being. If anybody knows somebody selling one that's local to me, I'd appreciate finding that out. And I think it would be great for me to get another one eventually. But I'm not in a rush. They'll pop up when they do. I'll keep my eyes open. There's other models that have popped up, but I'm not interested in that model. It's specifically the dual tone that I'm looking at. So Boomerang here says, I was going to ask how to get good action. Don't we all want to get good action? Oh, you mean that kind of action on the guitar? Yeah, okay. I can tell you how to do that. The other kind I can't. I can't really tell you. But this one I can. It's a joke, guys. Relax. Okay, so action is very important on any guitar. There's usually more than one step to getting your guitar set up properly. It probably goes beyond what I can tell you here in a few seconds. And there's great information on the internet about how to do this. But there's a few things that you got to do, and they have to be done in order. And this is where people chase their tails most of the time, is not setting up their guitars in order. There's some great books also that you can get off of Amazon that tell you how to do this. But the main steps, there's really a couple of them, is you got to look at your neck relief to see what it's doing. Basically, if it's doing this, if it's doing that, okay, that's super important. You want to check your string action, how high the strings are off of your fretboard, how high the tailpiece, if you have one, or the bridge is off your guitar neck. You want to also make sure that your frets are all nice and level. And all of these things come into play. You also want to make sure that your nut is all slotted properly, the depth of the slots are good, because what ends up happening is if you try and fix only one of those things, it's usually going to cause an issue somewhere else. So you might get buzzing, you might get strings that fret out. You want to look also what kind of strings you're using. If they're heavy gauge, light gauge strings, that's also going to affect the setup. A lot of people make the mistake of going to a different gauge of strings without redoing the setup on their guitar and think it'll be fine. And it usually isn't, because there's things that have to be adjusted accordingly. So if you're going from, let's say, 9s to 12s, there's going to be issues there. You're going to have more curvature on your neck because you have more tension from the fatter strings, and there's a whole bunch of other things. The slots have to be redone, or else they'll snag up and you won't be able to tune your guitar properly, or you'll be having tuning issues. There's a lot of stuff, okay? So understanding what the steps are and understanding which ones you should be doing first is key. And there's a lot of great information on the internet for that. There's a lot of great videos for that. I may have even made one in my archive, and you could probably take a look at that as well. But once you understand all of that and you follow the steps, you can get your guitars to play like butter. If you don't know what you're doing, it's the first time you're trying to do it, and it's a guitar that you use regularly, I would recommend just paying for it, bringing it to somebody that knows what they're doing, saving yourself the headache, and getting your guitar set up properly. Boomerang says, I don't get any these days. Oh, man. I'm sure you're not the only one, Boomerang. Hey, thanks, Marcel. Thanks for reminding people to hit the subscribe button. That always helps. I appreciate that. Farid says, Tony, I have a DK24 and the neck is moving in the neck pocket. Is it an easy fix or is it terminal? Well, when you say it's moving in the neck pocket, do you mean it's moving side to side or front to back? So if you're holding your guitar like this, when you say it's moving, if you grab the neck and shift it this way, is it moving that way or this way? It's probably nothing serious. It's probably just that the bolts on the back of the neck are not tight enough. You can probably just check that out, retighten them up, and you should be good to go. There shouldn't be very much movement in the neck pocket. If the guitar is made properly, there shouldn't be any side-to-side movement, or very, very little. If there is, it's probably due to the fact that it's shifting somehow, and it's probably related to the bolts. Exactly, Boomerang. String gauge changes everything. That's why I kind of stay with the same strings most of the time. I don't really go up or down. And if you do go up or down, you got to reset up your guitar. Butter. You could get it to play like butter. Oh, man. My toe's killing me. Anyway, Paul says, I ordered another Lakato WS70 wireless. They never have dropouts, etc., and sound like I'm using a cable. They need a recharge after 4+ hours, but I rehearse 6 hours. So, if you rehearse 6 hours, that's going to be a problem, no? Unless you have multiple battery packs. I don't know if they sell additional battery packs. Yeah, exactly, Presley. You can get some really nice, great video tutorials. I like to watch the ones that are directly from the factories. There was an excellent one that I had stumbled across that was a luthier from Martin doing setups. This guy, an older fellow, but he really knew what he was doing, and he explained it extremely well. It's probably still on the internet. David says, I need a tow truck. Kind of. Yeah, kind of like that. It's not funny, guys. All right. Okay, we do have our poll question. We'll take a look at that a little bit later on. There are a couple of other things I wanted to that I had on the agenda that I wanted to discuss today. Um, so let's see here. Let's start from some of the interesting stuff that have happened this week. Okay, one of the things that made rounds this week, if you guys probably heard, if you haven't heard yet, you will probably hear. The Who have initially sacked Zach Starkey. Now, if you guys don't know who the Who is, maybe look into it. But basically, the Who have been using Zach Starkey as their replacement for Keith Moon for a long time, probably like 30 years. Zach Starkey is Ringo Starr's son. And so recently, and this blew my mind, I heard that they actually canned him from they just decided to fire him after 30 years. And I didn't understand this, and I had to read the story. So then I saw that reports emerged that he basically got canned after a performance in London that they were doing. I think it was at the Royal Albert Hall, and I saw a video of this actually. They actually stopped the show mid-show because Roger Daltrey couldn't hear what he was singing over the drums. So the story was that during the concert, Roger was displeased. He was frustrated because he couldn't hear himself. He couldn't hear the key he was singing in because the drums were overpowering. And so for whatever reason, they decided to can the drummer. Now, I don't see this as a drummer problem. I see this as a mixing guy problem. If you can't hear yourself over the drums, it's probably because your mix, your in-ears or whatever it is, whoever's trying to get the sound the way it should be on stage for you is not doing the right job. But the odd thing to me is The Who is famous for having a wild drummer that can't be controlled. I mean, that was the legacy of Keith Moon, And so these guys coming out saying, oh, I can't do this because I can't hear myself over the drums, seems kind of weird to me. It kind of, that's the whole reason the Who became the Who, is for their wild antics on stage. So that blew my mind, But anyways, after a couple of days, I think this morning I read that now apparently they unfired him. And it was just a misunderstanding, apparently. So I don't know what happened. I don't know if they got a call from Ringo saying, hey, you can't fire my son. What the hell's wrong with you guys, But apparently there was some kind of publication made. It wasn't very clear exactly what happened, but they're chalking it down to communication issues, personal misunderstandings. But apparently they're taking, Pete Townsend and Roger Daltrey are taking responsibility for the confusion, and that they have requested that Starkey adjusts his drumming style for their concerts, their shows. And of course, Starkey said no problem. And so I guess now they're back together. Everything's fine and dandy. Just odd. Very odd story. It doesn't make any sense to me. And for those of you that don't know, this is not new. Of course, there's been tensions within the band, personal musical tensions over the years, a lot of drama, this kind of thing. But for those of you that don't know, Zach Starkey became a drummer not because of his dad that was Ringo Starr. They actually became a drummer because someone else encouraged him to play drums. And it's a funny story because Zach often refers to, how can I explain this to you? Okay, let me just go back and explain this to you a little bit better. Zach Starkey often considers or mentions that Keith Moon is his granddad. but it's not the traditional church, official sense. It's more like an honorary title based on his close relationship with the man, right? So Zach's father is Ringo Starr. And Ringo and Keith, hung around a lot. They were very close back in the day, back in the 60s and the 70s. They were part of the same rock star circle. They shared the famous lifestyle and everything like that. So Keith Moon often spent time at, the Starkey household with his father, with Ringo Starr and his son. And so Zach, who was very young at the time, basically was encouraged by Keith Moon to start playing drums. And even though Ringo didn't want his son to play drums, he didn't want him to go into music, he caught the bug. And I guess he started, watching Keith Moon play and all that kind of stuff. And he basically became influenced. And because of him, started playing drums. And it just so happens that later on became the drummer of The Who. So there's a lineage there. And I thought it was a cool story. And a lot of people might not know that story, But I just wanted to share that with you guys. Just weird times that we're living in when rock stars are complaining that the music's too loud. I never thought that would happen, especially with a band like The Who that had like massive, massive PA systems back in the day that would blow your head off. Anyway, all right. Let's see here. Boomerang says, or if it's too loud, you're probably going deaf in your old age. Well, Roger Daltrey has mentioned that he's not only losing his hearing, but he's also losing his vision. The only thing he has left basically is his voice. We all know that Pete Townsend has been struggling with hearing loss for a long time. I mean, you can't play music that loud and not have some kind of issues later on. And these guys are seeing it. And I think even, Townsend used to jump up and down all the time and fall on his knees. And I think he's even mentioned that he's had knee replacement surgery recently and all that kind of stuff due to the stuff that he was doing on stage. Stuart R. says, anyone heard the rumor of a new modeler coming in July? What's it going to be? There's so many modelers coming out right now, Stuart. Who knows? I have no clue. I don't know what it's going to be. It might be, something, a new model from the existing brands, but I don't know. I haven't really heard. Steven says, I cut a big mirror for a friend, broke bad, and had a 5 foot by 2 foot piece of glass landed on my left foot, cut side down. It didn't cut me, but the black and blue just went away the other day. Yeah, man, you got to be careful when you're doing stuff like that. You got to wear construction boots or something. Safety first, man. So speaking of modelers, the other thing that has kind of made rounds this week, and I don't know why this is such a big thing, but I saw it. You guys maybe saw it. Basically, John Mayer, Mr. Two Rock, Mr. PRS, Mr. Old Gear, Vintage Gear, was spotted playing a Neural DSP Quad Cortex at the Coachella concerts, right? No amp, no cabs, just a tiny little digital box. That's all he had. So everybody freaks out because, Mr. John Mayer is usually the guru of tone. People look at what he has on his board. Look at what he's playing. He influences a lot of other guitarists, and he's considered, a little bit of a cork sniffer when it comes to gear. And here he is, he's not playing, a $1,000 amplifier. He's just playing a little Quad Cortex. So obviously people take notice of this stuff, right? Now, is this Mayer acknowledging the practicality of using a device like this, using a modeling amp for big stage gigs? More and more people are doing it. So I don't know if there's any shame in it. But obviously this could be a signal that there's a shift going on. Tone purists are now embracing modeling more and more, especially at huge festivals. where there's, volume control regulations in place and all this kind of stuff. Are we at a tipping point right now where, analog tone is kind of the exception to the rule, and not the rule? As I was saying last week, I think, a lot of people that are going to be maybe buying amps are going to be stuck with them in the long term, because, who's really going to be playing 100-watt amps or 50-watt amps down the road? A lot of people are shifting to lower wattage amplifiers, 20 watts, 15 watts, even lower. And, obviously, if you're doing a last minute fly gig, maybe he was just flying out for the show and flying right out again. Maybe he figures, I'm not going to go there with a bunch of gear. It's going to cost me a fortune. I'm just going to grab a quad Cortex, go there and play. Now, I'm wondering how many people at the concert actually noticed or cared. Probably zero, I think the only people that probably noticed was maybe some guitar magazine, writer that, his job is probably to, spec out what people are using and talk about it. Probably the only one that noticed. I don't think the people in the crowd probably noticed or cared. So, that says a lot too, right? Simon says, any new guitars, Tony? The last my last purchase, excuse me, was the SG, the 61 SG that I showed here a couple of times. That was the last guitar that I picked up. I think you probably saw it. I played that guitar a couple of times on the show. So that's a good talking point for me, because there's something that actually caught my eye recently. And I didn't think it would, but it did. And I'll talk about that. Fender has recently released the Player 2, the modified series. Now, Fender got a lot of flack recently when they released a newer model that was kind of considered to be cheap, just not as good as the previous stuff. So they pulled a sneaky, and this week they launched the new Player 2 modified series. Maybe you guys have seen this. It's basically a series of guitar, but they have more like modern appointments to them. So things like compound radius necks, locking tuners, a couple of new finishes. It's like the Player series, but all grown up. Okay, and I usually don't go for this kind of thing, but I took a look at them, and there's one particular model that caught my attention, and I know I'm going back on what I said a couple of weeks ago, but this is how things are when you're addicted to gear. So one of the features that they introduced with these models are also noiseless pickups. And I did mention a while ago that I haven't ever really come across noiseless pickups that I felt sounded good. I'm curious about these. I want to see what they sound like. They do have modern appointments in the sense that they have SSH configuration, so single humbuckers. And there's one specific version of this model, I'll show you a picture of that comes with a Floyd and a locking nut. Now, the reason why, first of all, I had said previously, like, I was kind of done with Floyd Rose guitars because they're more hassle than they're worth. The fact that these guitars have a 12-inch radius, nice big fat frets, it's basically a super Strat. Okay, they do have the version that doesn't have a Floyd Rose and a locking tremolo. If you like those, that's cool. They also have a treble bleed circuit built in, so that helps. And they have a switching system that allows you to switch between full humbucker and single coil on the SSH models. So I don't know, have you guys seen this at all? If you have, I'm curious to know whether or not you think these would be a worthwhile purchase. I'll show you the information on screen here. we'll go to our lovely Long and McQuaid. They should actually be paying me for advertising them. Man, my foot's killing me. All right. Yeah, it's starting to look like a little cavatelli. I don't know if you guys know what cavatellis are, but it's getting pretty swollen. Okay. Anyways, we're going to wrap it up soon. So, here we go. I'll show you the guitar that I'm talking about. Can you guys see this all right? So this is the new Player 2 modified Strat. It's $1,629. Pretty expensive for what it is. But, you know, if you're into Super Strat type guitar, it could be what you're looking for. Now, they only come in a few finishes. They don't have a ton of finishes here. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the one that's Olympic Pearl, which is a cool color. I don't mind it. Has a nice tortoise shell pick guard, Floyd Rose, like I said, rosewood neck, and it's pretty sweet looking, if you ask me. So this is the Olympic White version. It also comes in a 3-tone sunburst, which is I wouldn't put 3-tone sunburst on a guitar with a Floyd. This one's a nice color too. They call it dusk. And it's kind of like a little bit of a sunburst. It's going from like purplish to black. Pretty nice. Nice color. Nothing to report in the back. There's no scalloped neck joint or anything like that. Anything fancy. It's pretty straightforward. You can see it's got locking tuners. Actually, this one doesn't have locking tuners because it has the locking nut. But the other model that doesn't have a locking nut has locking tuners. Pretty nice looking guitar, you know. And I wasn't expecting to like want a guitar like this, but I kind of like the pearl one here. Kind of nice looking. So they say it has a modern C-shaped neck, 12-inch radius, new Player 2 humbuckers and noiseless Strat pickups, upgraded electronics, the Floyd Rose. I'm still not convinced about the Floyd Rose, by the way. The body is made of alder, straight old polyester paint job, and 4-ply tortoiseshell pickguard, aged white plastic, nickel chrome. And the electronics are the Player 2 modified humbuckers. I don't know if anybody's tried these noiseless pickups, but if you have, let me know what you guys think of those. I mean, that's the sticky point for me. It's not really knowing how well the noiseless pickups would work. I'm not convinced. But it's kind of got my attention. Doesn't mean I would actually buy it, but I probably would like to try one out and see what's going on. If I can find one in a store somewhere. John says, Tony, I'm thinking of stripping and repainting a Chinese Les Paul. Have you stripped a poly finish? What's your suggested method? Sanding, heat gun, chemical stripper. Okay, so I'm assuming you're trying to strip the guitar because you want to get down to bare wood, or are you just gonna do an opaque finish over the guitar? Because if you're not gonna actually want to expose the wood, you don't have to even strip it. You can easily just apply a good coat of primer and paint right over the primer if you're going with a solid color. If you are going to be stripping it, it's a combination of chemical strippers and heat gun. Usually does a good job. It depends on how the guitar was painted. You never know what they're using on these Chinese guitars. They're usually pretty resilient to stripping methods. So you're gonna have to be a little bit resourceful. But I would say get yourself a good chemical stripper. You're probably gonna have to do a couple of coats of the chemical stripping. Just be careful not to apply the chemical stripper on the trim, all the plastic, because it's gonna eat the plastic. So Paul says, Tony, the Player with the Floyd in white is 200% all me. The new noiseless pickups not only sound killer, they actually can do the bell-like chime thing only on only on great vintage. Well, it's good to hear that, Paul. First of all, great minds think alike. I'm just not crazy about the price. The price is pretty expensive. 1,006 plus tax, man. You're getting up to almost $2,000 for a guitar like that. There probably would be a couple of other options to look at, but I would have to try it. If it feels good and it sounds good, that may change the story. We'll see. Okay, guys, I've been talking an hour and 20 minutes. I'm going to look at the poll question next because my foot's starting to kill me here. I'm going to be honest. I gotta elevate this thing. So I'm going to just go in and take a look at what we have in terms of results on our poll. And today's poll was kind of tying into the whole John Mayer thing. But let me just pull that up here. And I appreciate you guys taking the time to vote on these polls. It's a lot of fun to hear and see what you guys are thinking. Just to see if we're thinking the same thing. So here, let me go to it. All right, so the poll question for today. We got 198 votes on this poll. The question was, when talking guitars and gear, would you trade vintage for modern reliability? And this goes to the guitar that we just looked at here. A lot of people, when they consider a Fender, they consider like an older guitar, a more vintage guitar, something a little bit more standard in terms of playability. These guitars are not for everyone, right? But it's kind of something that I like because I do have a few other Fender guitars and they are more the typical old style Fender guitars. It's nice to have a little bit of variety. So I'm curious to see what you guys think. And so if I go by the most popular answer, 51% of you said, yes, modern gear always wins. Now, it's not just guitars, but it's guitars and gear that we were talking about. So modern gear always wins. 51% of you agreed with that. 38% of you said, no way, vintage mojo all the way. So 38% of you figured, even though the guitar is a challenge to play, might not be perfect or whatever, the mojo is what counts. And I'm willing to live with that. I understand that. I understand that mentality. And then 11% of you said other. Other means you had some other piece of information you wanted to share. So let's look at some of the others here. Dr. Dark says, I'm a cheap guy and having all sorts of gear, cheap and expensive over the years. I favor 90s solid state amps over anything out there, bang for the buck. And it's insane that nowadays with things like Fender Tonemaster and Orange, the new baby solid state amps with huge price tags, those cheap 90s solid state amps still sound better to me. So for amps, I'm sticking with the 90s solid state over Plexis, JCM 800s, dual rectifiers, or anything else out there for pennies on the dollar. So, Dr. Dark has a good point. If new technology, cranks your shaft and basically makes you happy, there's no point in spending a lot of money on the more expensive gear. And, this is specifically talking amplifiers here. Someone else said, I prefer modern features with vintage aesthetics. I think so too. That's kind of the holy grail. I love relic guitars. That's a traditional shape, but has stainless steel frets, roasted maple neck, and maybe active pickups. That's my sweet spot. Something like the Valiant guitars are awesome. I want a relic baritone Valiant so bad. So yeah, I think that's the, people who like to mod their instruments, for example, that's kind of like some of the stuff that they do, right? They'll take an older guitar that's kind of maybe beat up a little bit, has the vintage mojo, and then install maybe wider frets, stainless steel frets, active electronics, some other thing that's not obvious to spot, but is there, you know, and obviously can make the guitar a little bit more playable, a little bit more enjoyable, and, you know, more modern, so to speak. So I think a lot of people do appreciate the new functionality, the new features with a lot of the older Mojo. I think that's kind of the sweet spot. Someone else here says, my preference would mostly go to vintage because most tube amps, speakers, and guitars seem to get a feel and tone that just improves with age, but I certainly don't have a problem with modern upgrades to vintage equipment. So that one I have to take with a grain of salt because it depends on what we're talking about here. If we're talking about amplifiers, yes, I do agree that there's something about older gear that makes it sound good. Not all older gear is great. And especially if you're looking at older amplifiers, as I mentioned last time, the tolerances will shift over time. If your amplifier is over 20 years old, it's time to take it in for servicing because the caps will shift, things will crack, cold solder joint might break, there might be issues there. But you do get a nicer sound out of a broken in speaker, for example, that kind of thing. Older tubes, for example, if they're still working properly, but sometimes they don't, sometimes they fail. So it's kind of like, you can't paint the notion that older stuff always sounds better with a wide brush. I think there's specific cases and scenarios where that could be true, but sometimes it's not true, depending on the condition of the equipment. So do you guys follow me so far? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree? What's your take on all of this? John is talking about a finish crack. He says the current finish is cracked, so need to redo it. Crack on the neck around the first fret and chunk taken out on the edge where strumming forearm rests. Undecided on finish, will probably go for a rat rod look. Okay, but does that mean that you've decided to paint the guitar in a solid color, or are you looking for that exposed wood paint job? Because it really depends on what you're trying to do exactly. What I'm trying to say here is if you're trying to paint your guitar and you want to have the exposed wood, you got to be super careful when you're stripping it, not to scratch it. And sometimes when you peel away the paint, especially on these Chinese guitars, you're not going to actually get good quality wood most of the time. It's probably going to be bits and pieces glued together, which won't necessarily give you a really nice finish. So you have a couple of options. You can either apply a veneer, some kind of really nice veneer over the top, glue that in, and then paint your guitar so you have a nice exposed top and it looks really nice. Takes a little bit more practice, a little bit more finesse, but it's doable. Or you just paint it a solid color. Now, if there's chunks taken out of the paint, you can't just prime it and paint it unless you fix the chunks that are missing with Bondo. It's doable. You can also do that. A lot of times you can just, if the chunk is small, for example, you just put a bit of Bondo there, you sand it down flat really nice, you paint everything with a primer, and then you apply a clear coat over the whole thing. It saves you a lot of time and effort where you don't necessarily have to peel away all of the paint on the guitar. Orion Quest says, are old speakers worth looking into? Here's a Fender Oxford 10-inch speaker for sale in the area for about 50 bucks. Again, it depends on what the speaker has done over the years. You would probably want to try the speaker before you buy it. Some old speakers have cone cry. Some of the speakers have like micro rips in it or just noisy. You don't just want to buy a speaker without necessarily having a chance to hear it. No problem, John. I appreciate the questions. If I can help, further, let me know. David says, Paul Smith told me when I met him that just because it's old doesn't mean it's good. I found that true in some cases, some good, some bad. Yeah, it's all over the map, man. You know, you could get really lucky and come across an old piece of gear that really sounds great, plays great, and just fits perfectly with your style. And other times, you know, you appreciate the new stuff. The new stuff is definitely more consistent. You know, it's made with CNC machines. They're made with CNC machines that are perfect every time, down to, you know, the micro, you know, micromillimeter. They're all almost carbon copies of each other. Whereas in the old days, they were cutting these things by hand, sanding these things by hand. Quite different in terms of what you would get. So sometimes you get lucky and find a really good one, sometimes not, you know. All right, guys, I think we're going to wrap it up because my toe tells me it's time. I've been talking an hour and a half. I'm glad you guys have stuck around. I appreciate it. The 61 of you that are still here, if you don't mind dropping me a thumbs up on the way out, I would appreciate it. I'll be back here again next Sunday with more great topics. There's always stuff to talk about, so don't think we're going to get bored. We won't. There's just so much stuff happening. By the way, tomorrow I'll be posting a video review of this. This is the Donner Versa. This is the Yellow Fall 2. It's a 2-in-1 pedal, delay, reverb. So I did a little bit of a sound sample on this, and I'm going to be posting that tomorrow for you guys. So if you're interested in getting a pedal or interested in that particular pedal, you can get my feedback on it before you spend your money on it, just to make sure it's what you're looking for. All right, so please tune in for that. And if there's any other videos or any type of topics you want me to cover in my regular videos, please drop a little message or a little comment in the chat here. Let me know, because sometimes I'm scrambling for ideas, and so you guys come up with great ideas most of the time. So if there's something you want me to show you guys, something you want me to demo, just mention it, and if I can make it happen, I will. All right, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Have a great Easter, everyone. Enjoy the food, the family, the friends, your gear, all that great stuff. Don't overdo it. And please check in again next Sunday so you can get an update on my toe and maybe new gear. All right? Have a great day, guys. Enjoy yourself and have lots of fun. Most importantly, play your gear. See you soon.